I'm going to take a question from the audience. So one of our audience members asking if there is a demand from the client's end for new Sinhala and Tamil fonts. What do you have to say about that?
Isa, you can go first.
I think there's a greater demand in Sri Lanka for fonts, especially in Sinhala. I think even from designers, that's what we have been complaining about. I think that's what we have been talking about for the last, I don't know how many years. I think since the time I started advertising at Triad, I think we have been talking about it. And Chanuka and we have been fighting about it, saying, I'm sick of these fonts. And they're so old. And I think, like Chanuka was saying, the Singlish factors, I think we need to look at those things and maybe evolve our fonts. Fonts will be little more flexible. I think singular fonts are the most difficult fonts to use in a layout. And even though it's so beautiful and it's nice, it's so difficult to, when you have a nice layout in English, but it's very difficult to have the same. So I think it's time for us as designers and start evolving and start looking at how even the fonts should evolve. Even our language has evolved. So I think our fonts also should evolve, and yeah, we should do it.
When it comes to the demand also, I think, yes, clients do demand fonts, but like I said, it doesn't always end up in the best of processes because timeline and I mean, we can't blame clients also because our markets are very small. Our advertising markets are small, our product markets are small, and I mean, although we have to take inspiration from countries like India and any other European country, we can't at the same time expect clients to spend that amount of budgets. So the demand is there, but it's a matter of how do you get to it, like whether you put in more time or you put in more money or things like that. Those discussions need to, I think, open up more. But definitely there is a demand. There is a demand where people, advertising, rather even multinational brands who are trying to establish them in Sri Lanka are asking for a certain unique identity.
Right. Thank you. Let me check. Okay, so we are talking about the current environment for Sinhala-led branding projects. Because like I think Chanuka mentioned earlier, we start thinking in one language, and it mostly tends to be English. We start thinking in English. I think as designers, we lean towards English. Has there been an uptick in Sinhala branding projects, like Sinhala or Tamil? Like, has there been a language-led branding project coming through? Like, is there?
I think, I think we've had plenty of Sinhala and Tamil-led branding exercises coming our way. Even in advertising and in design beyond commercial art as well. But the thing is, it depends on again, how much of resources do you have to put in that certain exercise? Like if it's a multilingual exercise, you definitely have to put a lot of resources in that exercise to make sure that the design nuances and the cultural nuances, everything meets, and message is clear, to ensure all those things. I mean, anyone who would be listening who would have been involved in a national project or something that doesn't require much English would know this part, because there's a certain amount of man hours that you need to put into things like that, which is one of the deciding factors.
Which is not a luxury most often when we get briefed on projects. That's true. Nisayuru, what do you have to add to this?
Like Chanuka said, I think we all studied in English. I think then as soon as and then you join the industry, after a while you get into that pace of thinking in how to think in Sinhala, how to certain things. So I think of course we need to start thinking in our local language. I think that is very important. And if you don't think of most of that's why certain ideas, certain campaigns kind of tend to fail, because we have thought about it from a very foreign and different, and it always will be half baked. So I think, for an example, I was talking about it earlier also, like Fevicol in India, like how wonderful those campaigns are, because they have found the local insights and how to fit it into the localness. I think as a country, we are a little behind. I think even
That's
for
true.
us also to blame, I think we're little behind compared to our neighbors around when it comes to finding those very local things. There are a few campaigns that are really good, but mainly that has been the case.
Yeah,
Yes,
and to add to that, I mean, if we like we discussed earlier also, if we are to think of a premium brand, it's not totally necessary to think in English,
Yes.
because most of our population is bilingual. Other than for expats from other countries who live here, our population is largely bilingual. So you could always still stick to very grounded, rooted local language nuances and do even a premium campaign. So I think that's where we need to stop going back to the questions beginning also. I think that's where we need to start differentiating when it comes to doing Sinhala or Tamil campaigns.
Thank you. I'm going to take another question from the audience. So Sophia wants to know, what are the list of factors that you could consider when selecting a Tamil typeface for a project? And could you explain a thought process behind it? I think we did touch on this about font personalities and such. Yeah, I think there are two questions on that. Anything else to add apart from font personalities, guys, on terms of picking a font?
Nisa?
I'm thinking.
From the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the top of my head, I would say always look at like I kept saying throughout this conversation. Always look at how you can adapt and evolve, even if you use a certain font later on. I mean, let's talk very basic form of advertising. The age-old structure is you launch a campaign, then few years down the line you do promotions, right? So even in a structure like that, you need to be able to select and establish a font for your branding, which you can later on, if you want to modernize it, or if you want to add some age to that font, if you want to add some fun to that font, I don't know, whichever aspect, how would you develop that? So based on that, I think that's where you need to start as a base font. I'm just going into very basic thinking here.
Yes.
But from the top of my head, I think that those are a few things that you need to keep in mind largely if you're looking at establishing a font for a brand that needs to adapt and evolve with time.
So we do have another interesting question for which I don't know whether we have answers for. But Chanuka, you spoke about, when we spoke about clients and custom fonts, right? We spoke about time, but also finance, like how much, we are mostly smaller units. So do we have that kind of financing to actually do a font? In that case, our question is, what's the ballpark amount for development of a new font? And we are talking about multilingual fonts. So we're talking about maybe 2 fonts, like if we pick an English font, maybe 2 other Sinhala and Tamil fonts to be developed along with that, right? Or a complete font family for a project. Do we know in terms of maybe budget allocation? Can we answer it from that point of view, from a complete, like how much when they, how would you be
honest? To be honest, I wouldn't know how to cost for a font, because it depends on how, I mean, are you doing a full font family? Are you doing all 3 languages like you mentioned? Do we leave like, different nuances? Like as an example, for a beginning of a sentence, if we use this certain letter, how does it appear? Do we do things like that? So based on that, I'm not sure, but we are actually sitting on a basically gold mine in Sri Lanka, because there's a lot of designers, artists, even fine artists who don't do much software work, who are still hand rendering, mostly hand rendering their work. Even those kind of people are always creating fonts for something. It could be like, magazine mastheads and all those things. And they have the capability of developing that font. And unfortunately, this is very unfortunate. There are certain fonts released free online. That is because sometimes you just can't get someone to buy the font. So I think it's not because the font is not great, because no one would spend that amount.
I think yes.
Yeah.
No, for sure. We are going into that conversation of like font developing and that whole background of
So
there are very infant. We're like infants in that industry, I think.
Yes.
Talk about budget, guys. I feel like other than the multinational clients that we have, most of the other budgets are very small. So I think if you tell a client, like, because I know designing a font takes a lot of time. So imagine like a 5-6 million budget, and then you tell them, your font will cost you around 500,000 or even maybe 200,000. That client is going to have a heart attack, because why am I paying so much for a font? So most of the people don't understand the value. I think it has to create that value.
Yes. I'm wondering whether we have Pathum online today to maybe shed a little bit of light on this, because we keep getting a few questions about fonts and the amount of budget allocation and how much it will be. Pathum, I can see you now. Would you like to shed some light on this, please? Pathum, we can't hear you.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. So what do you want me to talk about?
No, so we have a couple of questions coming in to ask us about a ballpark amount of how much it will cost to develop a font, and how much in branding projects, how much do you allocate for font development? If we were building a font family or maybe a custom font only, what's the budget allocation like? Like, can we tell our audience in terms of if they're pitching for a branding project, how much of it can they put away to actually develop a custom font? Is there any sort of answer that you can provide? Sorry, you're a bit on the spot here, I know, but I'm trying to see.
Yes, and guys, like, first of all, like, thank you. That was like really insightful chat, and it's really interesting to hear from the designer side of the spectrum when like we're thinking about this. And one of the okay, so I can't give a ballpark figure of sorts because it matters in like so many factors. What I can do is sort of tell you how we do the pricing and the sort of framework that we think about when we are trying to do a font project.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah, so number one is the number of scripts. How many scripts are we supporting? Sinhala only, Sinhala and Tamil, and Sinhala and Latin, or EST, all three languages. And then there's the matter of the character set, which means, for example, we recently completed a project which for an institute which does Pali and Sanskrit typesetting as well. So that requires a lot of other combinations, like the sort of edge cases and these sort of archaic forms of letters and combinations like that. And we didn't get the project, but we recently pitched another project to a company, a financial company. It's not a bank, but a financial institute. So when we are doing a font for a financial institute, the character set expands, and we need to support all the currency symbols as well, because they wanted to use that font in their annual reports as well. So in that case, we have to add those special characters as well. And if the company is doing sort of multinational work, if they're doing business with Europe, then we need to support characters like Latin characters needed for with the diacritics as well. So character set is the other one. If they need like just a basic one, then it's not required. And then we are thinking about the font family. How many weights? Is it a single style, or is it multiple styles? As in, if you need hairline, bold, regular, like from regular to extra bold to bold, or evage styles goda corner, then it adds on to that as well. Then we consider the time, and then we also consider the licensing of the project. So if the client wants to keep the copyright for themselves, whether if they need it to be like exclusive to themselves, then it becomes like really expensive for them, because we are doing so when we are doing typefaces, we have to understand is we are not selling. If you're properly licensing a font, what you're doing is buying a license to a font. You're not buying the font, but you're buying a license. So if it's a big company and if they need to use it for their branding and use it in multiple computers, then we consider the usage of it and license it accordingly. So that is some of the parameters we think about. In Sri Lanka, there are few people who do design. I don't want to talk about like pricing of other people. So and it varies. It varies a lot in terms of branding, but yes.
But thank you, Pathum. I think you touch base on how actually the pricing structure varies, depending on client to client and what the scope of the project is like. I hope we at least gave you a rough idea of where to look at. I invite all our participants to, if you guys are interested in font design and that whole environment and that industry, please check out the Akuru Collective page, our YouTube pages. I think we have a couple of talks about developing fonts and such like that. Feel free to check those out. And I think as parting notes, I think we have questions, time for about maybe one question more. I would like to go back to our designers who we have today, who have about 20 years of experience with the two of them. Have you guys ever attempted to create a font? And if not, what do you have to say to other designers who are coming up or taking up this thing? Should designers actually attempt more to design fonts? In that sense, I think the short answer is yes, but I'm looking for you to elaborate.
I think I have done it a couple of times. One actually for Water's Edge, but that was actually for a logo. And thing is, it's actually an interesting area to work with. But I think, like we discussed, like the time and the money and all of that is a problem, and clients don't understand. And I don't think we have the budgets there yet, most of the clients. But as designers, maybe we can do it like a study for us, and that might help in the future. As in, like you do a certain project and you design a font, and then you present it to the client, and the client will understand the importance in having your own font.
Yes.
So yes. I think that is one way of looking at it. Shanu?
I have developed few fonts, like Nisa said, but not font families. Like for very specific purposes, we have developed fonts. I think the main thing you should take away is, like Nisa also said, and we discussed earlier, we need to start making this spiral somewhere where we start creating more and more fonts. So I think if not for commercial purposes, at least for the aesthetic values of our industry, we need to sort of start developing fonts. It does require a lot of time, and that's time and money when it comes to actually capitalizing it into a working font. But at least for the aesthetic purpose and the beginning stage, I think if we can invest more time as developers, as like, study institutes, I know there was a large set of font designing done by us when we were at AOD. So maybe at that level. And then when it comes to design houses, you should maybe as a part of training, even what we can do is start looking into those aspects that we don't spend much time on. So that's where we can make a change as well.
I think
so
university level, Chanuka, this happens, right? When you are in university, you tend to do, I think, but when it comes to the industry, I think the time and all of that, and then you tend to not do it enough. I think, that is
so
the
just
problem.
like I think just like when we are doing, even the seniors within agencies can do this. Teach people who, I mean, we know even before us, our very senior creatives who took us under their wing, they had an exposure to certain knowledge that we would like to grasp. So I think if you're coming from a design background, the biggest thing you could do is pass that down and sort of get people to practice, hand rendering fonts and how to try new things. But of course, that requires a certain amount of extra time that is put from your end if you want to make that change.
So I think it's very apparent that font making is a very time-consuming process to be done right. And I think in our discussion, we also figured that there is a big gap between our clients and us in terms of first understanding the relevance of fonts, like identifying fonts to begin with, so that then we can maybe, as a next step, talk about font families to them. Because if you don't see the fonts, like Nisayuru said.
Also, I think we need to understand the cultural and language nuances of other languages. Because, I mean, when we started off this conversation about multilingual branding, I think that's where we need to go back to as well. Just because you have the skill of designing things, it might not be enough. You might have to look into other cultural and language nuances that if you are to, again, go back to true multilingual branding. So
yes. So it does take a lot of time and effort, but I think takeaway is that we as designers should also create the environment for this by educating and building awareness about this and actually creating the demand for multilingual fonts within industry. With that, I think, thank you. I thank the both of you. It was very insightful, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. I would like to then now hand this over back to Leyanvi.
Thank you, Leyanvi. Thank you, Nisayuru, and thank you, Chanuka, for that lovely session. Very interesting. Some of the things I was also intensely listening, and I was also learning a lot from the panel. Thank you, Patum, for coming on board and explaining the part about the typography and font packaging. And I must also thank all of our participants for joining in for today's session. Thank you so much. And we have come to the end of our session, but let me remind you what we have got for you for the next week, the following week. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning, we have planned talks and workshops for all Saturdays throughout August. Now we have come to the end of the second week. We will be uploading the recording within the next week, so stay tuned to that. But on 21st, that means the next Saturday, we are going to invite another interesting panel to talk about Unicodes, Sinhala Unicodes. The discussion will happen in Sinhala. We'll be talking about the Unicode technology, the past and the present and the future. The panel members are, we have invited Dr. S.T. Nandasara, one of the pioneers in introducing Unicodes to Sri Lanka. We have also invited Danica Pereira, the founder of Akuru and CEO of Basha. We will be talking with Patum again on that panel. And Kosala Senuratna will also join from Muniac, and the panel will be moderated by Janaka Attanayaka, another talented type designer and a graphic designer from Akuru Collective team. After that, on 28th, that is the last weekend of AkuruCon, we will have all the workshops. We will have workshops on calligraphy, Tamil lettering, and also Sinhala, Tamil, and English logo designing. So if you are interested in learning more about logo designing, multilingual logo designing, you might want to go to head over to our website www.akurucollective.org/AkuruCon and register yourself for those workshops as well. Another thing is 30 Days of Akuru. I am again reminding all of you about this. If you haven't participated yet, go to our Instagram page at 30 Days of Akuru and check out the calendar and start drawing, start doodling, and sending in your submissions. With that being said, let's conclude our meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Malindi, actually, I'm sorry to cut your very nice, very nice ending shot, but I think we missed one question. I'm sorry about this.
Yeah,
this is very interesting because we have two agency people with us here today. Jan is asking whether there is scope for ad agencies to hire type designers.
I think Jan already knows this.
I know, Jan should know the answer to this.
Jan is, I think, trying to play a prank with us, but I think the short answer is yes, but it depends on again how much resources you want to use on anything on your day-to-day work or a certain project or idle time, whichever it is. I mean, idle time is also important for designers. So
I think we can look at this for maybe future, maybe in 2 years, not too long, but maybe 2 years, there might be scope for.
I think people should look into it. I think, yeah, that's a good area.
Sure. Okay, Malindi, back to you to end.
Just to add.
Okay.
I think maybe like this is a discussion that we can sort of take forward. I think Nalaka Karunakalage, who has asked another question, is another type designer that's been working on Sinhala fonts, and this is an issue that there's no industry is not investing in the fonts, and that's being one of the sort of things that we have been discussing, how to get this. Because our market is small, the ability to invest in such like good design becomes a luxury when you're in a smaller market, right? So good typography is a luxury that we are trying to sort of bring the while keeping the bar higher for the quality, bringing the price down and enabling, like for example, we have been like trying to introduce ways for students to get into type design and lowering the bar to designing new fonts. That's something that we have been talking about. So what Akuru Collective is trying to do is sort of build a framework where everybody can pitch in to develop fonts rather than one company or one agency sort of trying to bear the cost, sort of build a way for different agencies to come together and like pitch in. So I think this is a good start for us to like have this conversation with the designers and like try to expand our circle, just to add to that.
Yes, also, Jayan, if you're listening in, I think it's up to us to make that change as well, where designers are more and more more and more empowered in any aspect. So I think that's
actually
our
as industry professionals and designers, I think a lot is riding on us too. I don't know what we're waiting for. I don't think it will ever come from the clients. I think we need to push through on this. Yes, Malindi, back to you. Thank you guys, everybody.
I think that's something that we are trying to do with all these workshops or talks with Akuru Collective and AkuruCon. And also most of the things that we discussed here, most of things we have touched these topics on our Colombo type sessions in earlier sessions, and also we are planning to do more and more Colombo type sessions on these topics. So if you are interested to know these things and join the discussion, please head over to Akuru Collective YouTube channel. And if you have something about this, around these topics to share with the audience, contact us and we will provide you the platform, and you can come on board as a speaker and share your thoughts as well. So with that in mind, we also have all the other social media platforms. I mean, I'm also losing track of how many social media platforms we have, because we are actually in all the social media platforms. So wherever you are, we are there. So connect with us, share your ideas. That being said, good night to everybody. Oh my God, I have to remind about our sponsors. Thank you for Atra coming on board AkuruCon 2021 as our official art partner, and also thank you Animate and Stripes and Checks for coming on board as partners for 30 Days of Akuru. Okay, that's all I have to say. Good night, everyone, and thank you for joining with AkuruCon 2021.